project may include your mechanical, your electrical, your concrete trade, and or any other major trades that may be involved in the given project. So, here you have to know that the owner is entering into a single contract with the contractor, their architect or designer, and their engineers, as well as the major contractors. It's a single contract, okay? But what it does is it allows the contract signatories to be able to share the risk as well as the reward. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is definitely one of the advantages of this particular type of contract. It results in the project team focusing on a collaborative approach to risk management instead of each party protecting its own interests by shifting the risk to other parties. This particular delivery method involves a very high, like I cannot say this enough, super high level of collaboration amongst the parties, okay? In this particular delivery model, every single party that is signatory to the contract itself knows what each other's profitability is on the project, and should any one party fail to perform, what ends up happening is it hits their bottom line overall and not the bottom line of the other parties that are involved in the contract in itself. It is very conducive to fast tracking any project, thus shortening the overall project time frame, okay? And the financial incentives, like I mentioned, in this particular contract model or project delivery method, results in a higher level of collaboration and a reduced number of claims, as well as disputes amongst the project participants, because they're all in it for, as I would simply point it, for the greater good. So, what are some of the disadvantages? Number one, the biggest disadvantage here is that it requires an exceptionally high level of mutual trust and transparency amongst all of the parties that are involved. Furthermore, okay, it may not be suitable for those accustomed to working within the more commonly used and understood project delivery methods. And while there's an error on my slide, it says that there is no standard form of contract. That is not true. CCDC does have a standard form of contract, which is available, which is CCDC 30, if memory serves me well, okay? And it's in its infancy. I think it came out in 2018 or 19, if memory serves me well. And this particular project delivery method is still being tested, as is that contract form is being tested in the market to see if it requires any updates or changes to it. The previous project delivery methods discussed assume that the owner possesses the land on which the project will be built on, the owner has or will obtain the necessary financing for the project, and that the owner will be responsible for the operation and maintenance of the completed project. There are other delivery methods that are available where the owner contracts with a single entity to develop a project by providing land, financing, operation, and maintenance, or a combination of these services in addition to the design and the construction. The contracts and the contractual relationships in these other delivery methods tend to be highly complex, and they may extend for multi-year periods of time, even decades. The longest contract or contractual term that I have come across using these other methods has been 30 years. So that is a very long time to be committed in a form of contract. So, when the owner is a public sector entity, aka the government, these types of project delivery methods have been known as public-private partnerships, or P3s, which were renamed in the province of Ontario to AFPs, which are alternative financing, and procurement. The contracting entity, also known as the developer, assumes the role of the owner in subcontracting for the design and construction, and in doing so, it may employ one of the other previously discussed project delivery methods. Some of the more commonly used delivery methods here in Ontario include design, build, finance, design, build, finance, maintain, design, build, finance, maintain, and operate. So DBF, DBFM, and DBFMO are very commonly used project delivery methods here within the province. They use these methods within the province on projects such as healthcare, or judicial projects where they're building a new courthouse, or transit projects such as the Eglinton Crosstown, Union Station revitalization, amongst many others. Okay. So, what are some of the advantages? These other forms of project delivery allow the owner to transfer most, if not all, of the risk associated with the design and construction to a completely separate and different entity. It's also beneficial to an owner that does not have the knowledge, the resources, or the desire, ladies and gentlemen, to undertake all of the aspects of the project development. The owner is essentially purchasing a fully functional building as a package from one single source supplier, and any conflicts between the project professionals are internalized and never ever involve the owner overall. Some of the disadvantages. The owner may not have the time nor the expertise to prepare the adequate performance specifications for the desired end result. The project will be built without owner participation in the design process and may not meet the owner's expectations. The built-in cost of financing can be more costly than any typical owner-arranged financing model. No standard form of contract exists, okay, for these methods. Customized contracts would be required to be developed by a team of lawyers. Every time the government initiates one of these AFP-type projects, they retain a battery of lawyers to come up with the actual project agreement, as it's referred to. And these project agreements, ladies and gentlemen, are not short and sweet and simple. They're very complex procurement documents. And sometimes they could be as much as 3 or 4-inch binders, double printed on both sides of the paper. So they could be very, very, very lengthy contractual documents as well. The complex procurement process, especially for the P3 projects, and the high transaction costs may make these project delivery methods unviable for small or medium-sized projects. And if the developer is selected on the basis of price alone, the quality in itself may definitely be compromised. As you're already aware, for the majority of the standard project delivery methods, standard forms of contract exist. CCDC regularly publishes new and updated standard forms of contracts, as well as other forms, guides, and construction documents. As you're already aware, CCDC is a national joint committee made up of volunteer representatives from each of the 4 constituent organizations, as well as some public sector, as well as private sector owners. CCDC standard forms of contract are copyrighted documents, hence why you must use the CCDC copyright seal in order for the contract in itself to be valid. These are exceptionally well-known contracts in the industry, and the documents are typically referenced in the bid documents rather than being reproduced. All CCDC standard forms of contract have a very similar format with 3 basic parts: the agreement, the definitions, and the general conditions of the contract. There are many advantages to using CCDC standard forms of contract, and we'll talk about some of those momentarily. All of the CCDC contracts are available for purchase and download in an electronic format from CCDC document outlets. CCDC standard forms of contract may be modified for a specific project by means of supplementary conditions that have been written for that specific project. And a key point here is CCDC standard forms of contract represent industry-wide consensus of recommended best practice, and supplementary conditions should be used judiciously to make any essential modifications only. The standard forms have a lot of advantages. These are products of consensus building amongst major participants in the design and construction process. They aim to fairly balance the interest of all parties involved in the overall process, and they allocate the risk by the principle that the risk should be borne by the party best able to manage the risk. They reflect on recommended design and construction industry best practices, and they have a history of many years of use and refinement. The language has been tested and interpreted by the courts on numerous bases, and so all of these standard forms of contract are familiar to all parties, thus saving time to read and understand all of the necessary documents. Are there any questions, comments, thoughts, or concerns? Do we all understand the different project delivery methods that I have gone through right now? So let's talk about the methods of payment. I'm just going to go back to that slide right now, because it's easier to talk about it when it's in front of you as well. So here we go. There are essentially three basic contractual methods for payment for design, bid, build project delivery method, okay? The first one is the stipulated price, which is an amount that is set forth as a total payment for the work in itself. There is cost plus, where it's typically used when the scope of work, quality, and quantity is not fully known at the time of signing the contract, okay? And so the way this works is that it's going to be the cost of construction plus a percentage, whatever that percentage may be. And then finally, there's the unit price contract, which is typically used when the type of work required is known and specified in the contract documents, but the quantities are not known when the contract is initially signed and entered into. These are all used when you have design, bid, build. When you get into construction management, ladies and gentlemen, typically speaking, it is always going to be a cost plus contract. Cost of construction plus the construction manager's management fee of whatever the percentage may be. Okay? Does that answer your question? Perfect. Any other questions, comments, thoughts, or concerns?
Hello?
Yes.
This is Sun. I'm just would like to ask to upload this lecture slide before starting class, because for me, your speaking speed is very fast. So as a reading a lecture and then taking a note is very difficult to me. So if you upload before the class, it will be very helpful.
So as discussed at the onset of the semester, you know what is being covered in each lecture because it's in the course outline, and you have access and you have the textbook, so you should be able to read through the textbook prior to coming to the lecture in itself. After the lecture is done, I will be uploading the recorded lecture to Blackboard, so that will be available to you as well. And I will try to slow down how fast I speak. I will do my absolute best to try to slow down. I'm generally a fast speaker, but I will do my best. Any other questions? So is everybody clear? Oh, here we go. Ada says, is there a maximum minimum percentage for the construction management cost? No, it's whatever the owner negotiates with the construction manager. I have seen construction management costs as low as 1%. I've seen them as high as 12%. It largely depends on the size, the scale, and the level of complexity of the overall project in itself. And I should note that it is typically negotiated between owner and construction manager. There is no guide or set fee that's available out in the industry. And because the owner is going to spend time to seek out the best construction manager for their project, as well as they're going to be looking at and potentially putting out some sort of an RFP for construction managers, it will give them a good idea as to the range of the percentage that the different construction managers would be asking for. Good question, though. Any other questions? Okay. Because I'm trying to keep all of my classes at the same pace and on the same schedule, I am going to end here for today's lecture. Next class, I will be, just so everybody's well aware,